This is a spicy episode with our girl Trish Whetstone of the BC Young Fishermen's Network out of Canada, and I say that in the best way possible. Trish shares the back end of what they're doing to help fishermen become successful in this industry and the challenges they're currently facing on the BC coast. And I say spicy because we get down and dirty and expletives will fly because there's some real stuff going on, as we all know. Regulations are no joke. There's real talk, real laughs, and real heart behind each word, and I can't wait for y'all to listen. I'm Megan, host of the Partners of Commercial Fishermen podcast. This show is dedicated to girlfriends, fiancés, and wives of commercial fishermen to connect and feel less alone. As we know, this lifestyle isn't for the faint of heart. So this is our space in the world to discuss the highs and lows of being in a romantic relationship with a fisherman. Because it's different than being a family member or friend. It just is. Join in to laugh, vent, and share stories with others who get your lifestyle. So what are you waiting for? Let's dive in. Hey, y'all. We have a special episode today. They're all special, but this one's extra special. It's a little spicy as always because we got Trish Whetstone of the BC Young Fishermen's Network, who also, because if you've listened to our podcast, she's on episode 6, where she coined the phrase fish guts, feels, and fortitude. And it was effing amazing. I feel that you need to trademark that, number one. And so if you want to catch that, it's an amazing episode about the history of Partners of Commercial Fishermen back to the Viking era on forward, and just so much goodness, and sea shanties included. So I'm stoked to have you back, my friend. Thank you for being here so much, Trish.
I'm so happy to be back. Every time it's a pleasure with you, whether it's an interview, a run-in at an event, or just like our myriad voice texts.
Yes, I love it. So yeah, background on Trish and I met at the Pacific Marine Expo last year, and it was an immediate connection. And it was like, hey girl, let's just pick up where we left off in that other lifetime. So you're going to get some of that vibe today. And I was asking Trish before I press record, and she wears so many hats, and I wanted to clarify exactly what hat do you wear with the BC Young Fishermen's Network?
Okay, so this is actually a really important distinction to make. So thank you for asking. So I was kind of like, all right, how am I approaching this? So, all right, most people who follow you and are following me and know me as the online presence of Trish Talks Fish, which is I am a seafood literacy communicator and educator. So I help consumers to navigate the world of seafood, basically, how to do fish for normal people. I also streamlined into supporting seafood businesses and brands with copywriting, messaging, brand voice guidance, and a variety of other mediums to elevate their businesses. So we got a two-pronged attack on the seafood world there. That is Trish Talks Fish. And I try to keep Trish Talks Fish relatively apolitical as possible. The reason for that is not to stick any heads in the sand. Obviously, we talk a lot about economic accessibility when it comes to seafood. The overall mission in that is essentially seafood for the people, making it aware and accessible to all, regardless of particularly economic station. So naturally, because, we are being priced out of existence, politics do come into that in some sorts of discussions. The reason I try to keep fisheries politics out of it is because it can be just overwhelming to my audience base, which are primarily busy people, busy parents, who they just want to know how to include seafood into their diets in a way that's sustainable, safe, healthy, and affordable. So that's why I try to keep that out. Anyone who wants to go on a deep dive with me into politics, slide into the DMs because I'm here for it. So that's Trish Talks Fish. With the BC Young Fishermen's Network, I am the coordinator of the network, which is a by fishermen for fishermen network. So it was formed in, I believe, 2017 under the T-Buck Suzuki Environmental Foundation. I'll include a link to them in the notes on this. They really are quite interesting and worth checking out. There's a pretty strong history on that involves the intersection of commercial fisheries and sustainability, small scale commercial fisheries specifically in British Columbia. So under them, the BC Young Fishermen's Network was born. It was created basically to provide the tenets of support and education, public visibility, and why am I forgetting the third one? I'm sorry, I've only had one cup of coffee. I'm forgetting my own mission. And community building, like the most important one of a network. So as their coordinator, I operate under the governance of my steering committee, which is made up of seafood harvesters of a variety of ages. So young fishermen, what does that even mean? Some would say it means under 35. Some would say it means under 55. Realistically, we are here to provide support, guidance, mentorship, network access to fishers of all types, varieties, and ages. We do put primary focus into recruitment and retention of young participants and new entrants. New entrants can be 50 years old. You know, maybe you were a FedEx driver for the first half of your career and you decided you needed to change. We're not going to gatekeep that. So my steering committee is made up of a variety of ages and types of fishermen. I am governed by them, as well as the TBUC overall governance, because being under them, there are certain political things that we just can't do because we're a registered charity, and that's okay. Because one of the tenets of the BC Young Fishermen's Network is that we are an apolitical network, which is pretty much impossible in fisheries, as you know. But we do our best to really kind of hone in on providing resources to fishers, providing opportunities to connect and build community, and opportunities to be more publicly visible so that, you know, the citizens of British Columbia, other fishermen, consumers know that we exist, but they know why, and why the next generation of growth of small scale commercial fishermen is important to the sustainability of small coastal communities in BC and beyond. So as the coordinator, I have kind of just started saying, like, you guys, I am just the executioner. I swing the axe. You decide who's on the block. Because it, like, really, I am shore support in every way. I am not the one out on the water. I am not a new entrant to becoming a fisherman. So I am there as an organizer, a coordinator, a community builder, a communicator to support what those guys need. They tell me what they need. I swing the axe. That's my role.
Heck yeah.
Long story longer.
They couldn't have picked a better person to bring down that axe, to bring down the hammer. And personally, I mean, that's such a huge task to take on. And I'm wondering, how is that transition like for you, from going from Trish Talks Fish and seeing politics is on the horizon, we're not really going to touch it, to now basically motorboating it?
Yeah, that's, you know what, that is a very accurate way of describing the situation, because I definitely am motorboating it. And, you know, as with it being an apolitical network, most motorboating in most situations and contexts generally happens behind closed doors. So it definitely involves a lot of research and just background effort to understand the minutiae of what is going on various levels in fisheries regulation, licensing, politics, and how that is impacting small scale commercial fishermen and new entrants, in order to provide the best, support possible given those situations. So the transition into that was quite hectic, to be honest. I approached it with an awareness of my own naivete, which I think is like kind of a win on my part to recognize that, because I knew I was aware of a certain level of fisheries politics, but I would actually say more on a in the seafood space and how it is impactful sort of like after landing the catch. And of course, aware of some of the politics and also a ton of historical politics. Being my experience of research into commercial fishing history of the North Atlantic, obviously there's been some politics there over history, literally since forever. So, I was aware that like there was going to be some stuff. I didn't know how much stuff. um, and I really didn't I didn't realize that how dire the situation was overall and what the people that I am supporting are facing on on a real-time real life level. So absorbing that it just took a lot. It just took a lot of resources, took a lot of brain power and a lot of mental energy and empathy and an effort to understand, and also within fisheries understand different perspectives, because there are different groups, different people who feel that, this is more of a priority than this, or vice versa, or we need to focus here, or, so even within the industry, there's divisiveness. And it really, it stems from a place of literal fear that people are going to lose their livelihoods, their communities, their well-being, their families will be impacted. Like, it's very legitimate core fears we've got going on that we're dealing with. And, unfortunately, a higher powers that be in, our government who operate under different perspectives. Really trying to not be political. It's so hard. So for me as an individual, it took a lot. It took a lot. I've always had a depth of empathy and compassion for fishermen and for seafarers, and a lot of that comes from being very aware of and researching the history and the intersection of identity and creative expression and fisheries, and how much it truly is a vocational experience. It's not like a job, and how much it impacts and relates to the entire family, the entire community. So like I cried a lot in the shower. And so, I try to kind of get it out there and like not bring it too much home, which if you asked my partner, he'd be like, okay. But I really just had to take the time to absorb it and look at the network as it stood when I kind of inherited it, and be like, okay, let's like focus on core needs here. I can't get overly swept up in the feels. I kind of need to lean into the fortitude, because that is what is needed here. So yeah, I did definitely like take a dip on the Trish Talks Fish side for a bit, just to really establish myself in that role and, be able to perform it to the best of my ability. And it was really just a test of a tightrope walk of managing your own resources. Sometimes I was really good at it, sometimes not so much. But it's all learning, and it's So again, long story longer, it was a shit show, and it's a motorboat, but we're still here.
Love it. Thank you for all of your fortitude and your fish guts and your feels, because you couldn't have said it better. And I actually had a podcast interview with Melissa Collier of West Coast Wild Scallops, who her interview actually is live today on September 26th.
Oh, exciting. Okay, I'll be watching that after this.
Yeah. No, after speaking with her, I'm realizing the government, do we say the man, what do we do to not bring it in politics? Has been keeping y'all busy. I mean, they are worried about
it. Yeah. Yeah, we have been they've been keeping us busy.
Yeah. I mean, threatens closures with, facts that aren't 100% factual or, quote unquote facts, numbers that are coming out saying, commercial fisheries are of this value and really they're exponentially worth more value. And they're just not placing any kind of concern, and also not even listening to these families and fishermen who have done years and years of research to give the government information so they can learn from it. Anyway, it's on the podcast. I would love to know. On that
I'm really stoked that Melissa was on. I am so glad that you two connected. She's like, I have her in my phone as BC Young Fishermen's Network mom because she has provided me she's kind of like, she's really one of the most active members on my steering committee, and she has just provided an exponential amount of guidance and just sort of background information and support through this experience. And I'm incredibly grateful for her. And I'm so glad that she went on, and, because Melissa, she'll say some things. And I'm glad that she touched on those pieces that as a representative of the Young Fishermen's Network and T-Buck Suzuki Foundation, I can't always speak to those as Trish talks fish, like I can do what I want. But, so super glad that you got her on and she was able to connect on those pieces.
Thanks to you. That's how we know each other, is through you and your Instagram. And it was funny, after our podcast, I stopped recording, and then it was a whole other 40 minutes of going off that I actually recorded it on my phone. She knew about it, recorded it. And now it's going to be a private podcast series for forum members, forum members, because it's just so raw and real and off the cuff about what families are really dealing with and what the hell, they're trying to do to survive. And on that note, I would love to know, I guess including this as well, what challenges have you seen on the front line, and what are your current priorities for rebuilding the network? And I know you said there's so many different priorities and all these things. How do you determine what to go for first?
Well, I mean, there were obviously, there's a ton of challenges facing the small scale commercial fisheries industry in BC as a whole. There's another layer of challenges that are facing new entrants. And when I started with the Young Fishermen's Network, there were a lot of challenges that I walked into facing the network itself. So I'll kind of, I guess I'll start high level and kind of take her down. High level wise, I would say the greatest challenges currently facing commercial fisheries, and please, if you're a commercial fisherman, feel free to jump into the comments and be like, yo, you're wrong. Because I am always super stoked to change my opinion or perspective based on new factual evidence. Just gonna put that out there. We are not stuck to one perspective, except for, work hard and be nice to people. That's kind of baseline. But so higher level, I would definitely say that one of the greatest challenge facing BC commercial fishermen is policy and regulation. And I'm sure that Melissa went into detail about that. So that's a huge deep dive. So thankfully that podcast is available on your platform. I guess. I would say that is the largest number one. In terms of small scale commercial fishermen, in terms of new entrants, access. So access to, stepping into roles where they want to have their own licenses and buy quota. And access to fishing space, access to finance. Fisheries, as you know, is a wildly economically prohibitive vocation. The sheer overhead of being a owner-operator commercial fisherman is quite exponential. So accessing that kind of funding is very challenging. Unless you are born into a multi-generational fishing family. And even then, it's like, okay, great, you might inherit this or that. You still have to do the constant maintenance, the renting or leasing, it's just, there is cost on cost on cost on cost crewing up If you want to become a deckhand and want to deckhand, or like basically, like for hire for your entire career, like great. Not everybody wants to run a full-scale commercial fishing business. It is a lot. Just the same as not everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Some people, my mom, she didn't want to be a CPA or a CPA. She just wanted to go to work and do accounts receivable and go home. So she did. There are plenty of people who want to be in commercial fishing who have that desire. So in that way, it's more like public visibility challenges and actually accessing how to get there, and making, creating awareness in, at the youth level, at the high school level, even, engaging it into conversation as a viable career path in, at the school age level. So those really are kind of the greater challenges. And I mean, there's so many more, but those are kind of the ones that I identify as being the bigger, like the greater sort of, when you put your CEO hat on in your life, like what are the big barriers here? Money, greater access, and like, are these things even available? And awareness. So that's what is really like, my kind of core big ones when it comes to new entrants and young fishers. And then for the network itself, when I entered into it, it had been in a bit of a state of dormancy for, I'd say, about a year and a half, due to really like pandemic, which came, it kind of brutalized commercial fishing, and it created a whole whack more problems. And also just like staffing was challenging during that time. There was some organizational change. There ended up not being a network coordinator for, I want to say, about like 6 months to a year. So things just kind of fell off the radar, which is both a bit of a blessing and a bit of a curse, because I walked into very little framework, no like pickup projects, and really not like a whole lot of where to start guidance. And at the time too, my steering committee, who has been, had kind of been also in a state of a bit of dormancy for some time, had moved on. Like a lot of them moved on to other roles. One of them is now the president of the union out here. Like, it's like other roles, other priorities, maybe decided to, step away from it for family like needs and whatnot. So I kind of like, I walked into a like, what am I doing with all of this? The good thing is also that like, so that was kind of the curse side. It's also a blessing because I walked into kind of a bit of a fresh slate, which gave me the time to kind of figure out, as you like to say, when you first walked into Pacific Marine Expo 7 years ago, you're like, what's going on here? And now 7 years later, you walk in and you're like, what the hell is going on here? So
Totally.
kind of that. So yeah. So the challenges facing the network were really kind of like the rebuild effort, and really like reestablishing trust in the network, establishing consistency, like showing up when we say we're going to show up, and really being active and present and listening and constantly reaching out and asking, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? And not deciding for people, because that is a huge one that I think can sometimes get lost. Is, you have, especially when it's like you work from home and you're not like a boots on deck fisherman, or you're not always like down on the dock. Like I've hardly been on the dock at all this year because I've been hammering out at the desk. But it does create a bit of siloing, and you can start to kind of go into your own direction of what you think things are and what you think people need. So really like just asking, like, and getting that feedback. And every time you do something, like get that feedback, ask the people who are the ones who you are supposed to be directly positively impacting. So in terms of how I'm doing that. So I'm actually just checking my notes because I did write things down, shockingly. Yeah, so building trust, building consistency, really like showing up and being like, yeah, we're here. This is what we do, and making fishers aware that we exist. Because there's a lot of fishers on the coast who maybe aren't aware of what we do and the supports that we provide. And also really keeping lines of communication open. So that's like, you know, having lots of contact points for ways to reach out to us and to be communicated with. Um, Not just being like a shiny Instagram profile, because that's great. But if you don't have the pudding to back it up, what are you even doing? So one of the key pieces of creating that trust and consistency and building that relationship with the fishermen, as well as with seafood stakeholders and other associations and organizations in the industry, has been putting in the work to create really like strong framework scaffolding for the year so that fishermen have things that they can hang their hat on year after year that will outlive my engagement with this organization. Because that is one thing that when I came in was a little bit fluxy, I found. It's like, again, a bit of a blessing and a curse. There's a lot of creative leeway with this organization to sort of build your own. It's like a little build a bear kind of situation. It's like, this is the basics of the role, but add your own spice and flavor. But it's kind of like, it's a bit more than that. It was sort of like, here's a pot, add all of it. So I was like, okay, that's great in some capacities. However, given that people shift through roles all the time, in particularly through nonprofits and just with economics being as they are, like, sometimes you have to move for, financial reasons. I was like, there needs to be something that anyone can walk into this role and there will be a playbook of the annual gathering happens in January. This happens in February. This happens in March. This to this is this time of year. Summer is planning season because everyone's fishing. September, we go really headlong into the fall season. We do meetups in here. We do webinars here. Like, this is the things that you can count on. Another thing I've done is starting to produce monthly newsletters. So it's a little thing, but it's consistency and communication that shows, we say we're going to put something out every first Friday of the month. We put something out every first Friday of the month. We say we're going to follow up with this information. We follow up with this information. And another piece of that has been creating, well, really kind of with the incredible help of the communications director for the organization, who is an absolute genius, completely revamping the website to create an actual user-friendly experience that allows people to clearly and easily access the resources that we provide and communicate with us. So it's been a real effort to be like, okay, create the frame, create the playbook, follow up on the things, be consistent, and, really keep those lines of access and communication open. That has been my key effort over this year. And next year, we're going to build on that. And I've actually got a meeting coming up with my steering committee because, again, like, what do you guys want? Tell me where to swing the axe. I'm not going to go ahead and decide that.
Yeah, no, such great information and amazing insight to see how much people are doing behind the scenes that, you don't really get to see. It's the unsexy work that is not Instagram worthy, if you will, but is so important. And the communication part, which is huge because fishermen and fishing families often feel they are not being heard. It's incredible to know that's one of your pillars, is that communication is key. You say that you speak to your steering committee. I was wondering if you could take us inside of those conversations. Also, do you speak with fishermen outside of that? And do you, aside from Melissa Collier, speak with partners of commercial fishermen and are y'all at a bar? Is it by the docks? Is it on a Zoom? Is it an in-person meeting? How do these ideas, how does this communication happen?
Well, okay. So with the steering committee, it is a little, it's a fisherman. It's a bit like wrangling goats. It's a bit of a goat rodeo. And that, I mean, honestly, that is not said with any shade. Like, these are busy people. These are busy people who, don't necessarily have time to respond to an email when they're on deck. That's fine. And they don't necessarily want to dig into an email when they're home. And I totally understand. So in those conversations, for the most part, to start at the beginning of the year, my main directive was to plan the annual gathering. For anyone out there who's ever done any kind of event or conference planning, it's a bitch. It's a lot of work. I did it for 15 years, sucked my soul dry. God damn it, am I good at it? And it was basically like, here's your job. Annual gathering needs to happen in the next 2 months. Make it happen. And I was like, okay. It was, yeah. And so that required like a pull together of the steering committee and being like, okay, guys, I need help. I don't know anybody in this side of the industry. Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to talk to? What's the content you need? Like, it just really like, it was right out the gate. What do you need? And so in this case, it was in the context of like the annual conference, because I was like, I need to know what topics you need to hear about. I need to know what skills you need to learn. I need to know what conversations you want to have started, because I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend I do. So like right out the gate, it was really important to establish that was my baseline. It's like, communication, you tell me what you need. And then after the gathering, which was held at the end of March last year, and that is entirely based on when I started with them, which was the tail end of December. Usually it is held in January because that is like the one precious moment of time that most people are not fishing. So like end of January, there's this little window. And so this year, like, that's great because then it'll provide a little bit more lead time afterwards for follow-up, for probably hosting some workshops that are more marine safety oriented, because they've like the fishers have expressed that that's something they want accessible to, before everyone hits the deck and starts fishing season in like late March, early April. So because the gathering landed where it did, it pretty much went from there to, okay, bye, everyone's fishing. So with the steering committee, I didn't have a lot of chance for follow-up. I did send a lot of emails. And I found that my best strategy for that was basically just to be like, hey guys, here's what I'm doing. Bullet, 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 bullet. If any of this raises red flags, tell me. I will assume that no news is good news, and keep on doing what I'm doing. Just like something that's like so succinct so that they get the info. They have the opportunity to speak up if they're like, hey, this is not worth the time. We don't need this, or like, this is going to cause problems with so like this thing or that thing. Then I can be like, okay, put it on the back burner. We'll talk later. So that's kind of what communication has looked like up until recently, in terms of within the committee. With fishermen, I've really been making an effort to get out there in a visibly public way to promote and create awareness about the network. So that includes going to, Spot Prawn Fest, Crab Fest. I had one of my colleagues do that. And really kind of like just put myself in any space to connect directly with fishermen and directly with people who are connected with fishermen, i.e. like partners and families. That's seen some relative success. I really feel like the most success in terms of engagement has been online. And that's, due to a couple of factors. BC's a long coast, man. We're all over the place. and I working from home on the Sunshine Coast in Gibson's, it's like I know pretty much everybody in the Gibson's fleet. I run into them all the time. I'll be like out on the water and get a text from one of the fishermen who's like, "Hey, are you out there?" And I'll be like, "Yeah." And he'll like roll up, and we'll like raft boats and like hang out for a bit and chat about, fish stuff. So sometimes that looks like, looks like that. It's really kind of a like in a lot of ways, I try to primarily focus on driving that online engagement because that's where I can connect with the broader groups. And when it comes to in person, yeah, it's pretty ad hoc. It's at bars, it's on the water, it's at the dock. It's the random call I get from my incredibly dear and vocal fisherman buddy who's like, "Hey, I just wanted to ask you about this thing." And then 2 hours later. um, so yeah. When it comes to the partners, it's interesting because a lot of the fishermen I know, their partners are actively involved in the fishing business. So like Melissa and Joel, great example. Sonia Strobel and her husband. Sonia owns Skipper Auto. She was a teacher. She married a commercial fisherman. And then through, dire straits of needing, to somehow find a way to generate income and sell their catch, she got very entrepreneurially creative and created Skipper Auto's CSF. So she's a whole other thing that if you haven't touched base with her yet, connect. But yeah, so that is primarily where I've had the opportunity to connect with partners. Otherwise, when I'm talking directly with fishermen, particularly in like a casual hangout context, I always try to ask like, "Hey, what does your partner do? How old are your kids?" Just sort of like gently lean into those questions, not be like, "Is everything okay at home?" I usually say that to, people when, internet trolls, when they're like, coming at me for like my eyebrows or something like that. I'm like, "Are you doing all right? Are you doing all right?" So yeah, it's sort of like bringing that awareness sometimes to fishermen that like, "Hey, like, how's your wife doing? How's your husband doing? How's your partner doing?" Like and it'll sometimes kind of make people think. Like perfect example, I was down at the local marine pub by the name of Grandma's. It is exactly what you would imagine. And ran into just a couple of young commercial fishers, a skipper and his deckhands. It's great because my partner often wears the BC Young Fishermen's Network hoodie out and about. So people will be like, "Hey, like, what's that? Da, 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 da. Are you a fisherman?" And he's like, "Nope, talk to her." And so then he's like, and at that point he'll know he's lost me for an hour, but which is fine. But so I, in this case, connected with them. I'm like, "Hey, like, what do you guys do? This is what I do. This is what the Young Fisherman's Network is. Here's my card. Here's how to like connect with us. Like, what do your and then I'm like, what do your partners do? Are they in the fishing industry? Are they involved in your business? Like, and it's sort of like I kind of, how long have you guys been together? How did they feel about your work? Because it's a lot. And then, they'll kind of be like, "Oh, like, I don't really know." Or like, and they'll kind of be like, "Actually, yeah, like she seems kind of stressed and like she doesn't like that I go away and like gets nervous about this or that." And I'll be like, "Okay, well, hey, like if you want to connect her with a resource, there's this woman. She wears great hats, fantastic scarves. She has like the cutest bangs and is an absolute powerhouse when it comes to sporting partners of commercial fishermen. You should connect with her. Here's her Instagram." So that's really kind of like how I try to weave that in there. And then I also plug you like all the time. So
thank you. And thank you for being such an advocate for the fishermen and their families, and even bringing up questions to make them think about, their life, because also it's like, can be such an autopilot thing. I mean, commercial fishing is so monotonous, as Chris would say, it's just repetitive over and over again that you can get lost just in that Zen moment of just doing all the things that you don't even think about. Oh yeah, how is this affecting my life? I mean, we were talking about this off the record. We were talking about, just maintaining, what is important for us and how that will, how that can affect your, mental health, personal relationships without even realizing it.
Yeah, it's the wheel out of kilter concept, which I can't remember if I read that in a like mindfulness, like Thich Nhat Hanh book, or if it came from my university professor when I took that random Buddhist meditation and neurology course. But anyways, at some point, someone described the concept of the personal life ecosystem as a wagon, and you have your key pieces that are incredibly important to you. They can be your family, they can be your friendships, they can be your relationship with yourself, they can be your vocation, they can be your intimate relationship, they can be a number of things. And if one wheel is out of kilter on that wagon, the other 4 or 5 or whatever wheels can be rocking, I guess. And it's going to throw everything out of alignment, because it is an ecosystem, and it's important to be aware of nurturing and caring for and maintaining all of those pieces in such a way that it also, is within your resource capability. So like, no big deal, just like how to do life with Trish.
That's such a great analogy.
And how to minorly successfully exist.
Yeah, I love that. So in a sense, if your wheels are rocking, come a knocking, because we need to fix something.
Yeah, because if your wheels are rocking, like absolutely come a knocking, bring your tools, bring the oil.
Yeah.
Fix that wheel up, and she needs some love.
I love it. Okay. Now here's a nice, simple question. Through all these, the conversations that you're having, all the research that you've been doing, and I know you've touched on this before, but is there something that rises to the top when you think of what is lacking and what is abundant within this world?
Within this world, like as in like commercial fisheries or young fishermen?
Yeah, sorry. Within this world of the BC young fishermen and those associated with it.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I was like, abundant and lacking in the world. I'm like, Megan, that's not an easy question. What are you doing? Okay. So I would say, in terms of what is lacking for me, and again, like I'm not sure that everyone has a different opinion of what they need most. What I see as lacking is clarity. A clear path for young people who particularly ones who don't have a commercial fishing generational background. Clear path to how to go from, I don't know anything, but I'm really curious and just I want to know what this is like. There's something that calls to me, because let's be real, fishing is not like a casual everybody job. Like there is something about it that is a calling. That is literally the origin of the Latin vocation. So I think a clear path from I don't know anything to owner, operator, captain. This is my livelihood. I employ other people. I provide seafood for my community. I support my community. I support the greater seafood trade. I am that. And also the steps along the way for those who don't want to take on that level of business management and entrepreneurship and, responsibility. Like that's no shade. And like what most people don't, like you need people at every level. So I think clarity in that path. And I know that the New England Young Fishermen's Network has a great like deckhand to captain program. And I've been, keeping an eye on that. I've been keeping an eye on their activity. They are doing absolutely incredible work. And I've reached out to them, hoping to maybe connect with them on the Pacific Marine Expo talk topic. And also that at the Pacific Marine Expo, National Fisherman has a bit of a guidebook to like how to become a commercial fisherman. And it's different for every region, of course, because of different regulations, needs, etc. But I feel like something like that would really make a difference, just as like a lightning rod to bring to the table for, you know, if you're going to a high school job fair, if you're going to a university, if you're going to, oh, sorry, my alarm just went off. It's my like gratitude alarm that every 2 hours tells you to sit the fuck down, bish, and like look around you and appreciate that, you know, you have a house, you have food on your table, you're talking to like one of the most incredible women in the world. So yeah.
I'm grateful for you too, my friend.
Yeah. So I'd say that's kind of like having that lightning rod would make such an incredible difference to just being able to like go to an event and be like, hey, boom, here's like this really key pillar of what we do. And that could encompass and involve all aspects of our mission and mandate, which is education and sport, community development and networking, and public visibility. So that's a goal of mine. And you know, it's funny because when another thing is obviously like money, access to funding. You know, it can be hard in this role when I've already got so much else to do to like gain, you know, go on the hunt for like sponsors and grants and this and that. Thankfully, we've just hired a really talented grant writer for the overall organization, they've been doing that for 15 years. So I'm like, great, I'm glad that's your specialty, because like I'm a copywriter and I'm great at being like, boom, pow, these are the benefits, buy now. But the nuances of grant writing are a little bit more extreme. So that's another thing. So you know, having the finances to support actually implementing and creating these kinds of programs. Luckily, you know, one of the weird things that I bring to the table is having, you know, a background in like theater production from Newfoundland. I'm really good at, and also working in events with nonprofit like heritage centers and such. I'm really good at creating things with a budget of like $1 and a bucket of wool. So some of the projects I've done, I'm just like, yeah, we're just going to do this and we're going to use a Google sheet. That's what it's going to be. Like, we're not going into deep research here. We're not paying consultants. I'm going to create a directory of deckhands, and there'll be a Survey Monkey form to fill out. It's like, these are the questions. You go on the deckhand directory, and then skippers can reach out to me and ask for the directory, and they can contact people who want to be deckhands. Like, it's that freaking simple. So that's a way that I try to get around that as much as possible, in, you know, while I'm sitting there being.
Oh, we've paused. Can you hear me? Testing.
Okay. All right, cool. I was going on, and then I was like, hang on, I lost. You know where we left off there?
Yes, you were talking about the directory and the simplicity of just connecting and not making it any more complicated than it needs to be.
Exactly. And I feel like that partially is, you know, a really great thing, because there is so much of fisheries is so complicated. It is like seafood is a ridiculously complex world. Like, you know, everything from policy and regulation, licensing, funding, boat, like everything about fisheries. And that's just wild capture fisheries. Like, there's a whole lot of other stuff, and supply chain and processing, and where does this fish actually come from, and then consumer awareness. Like, it's a lot of Christmas lights that have been sitting in the attic for a long time. So anywhere where it can be simple and clear is great. Anywhere that I can create those spaces where it's just easy, like, just click this link, fill out these 5 questions, boom, you're done. You don't have to think about it anymore. Maybe a skipper will call you. Be ready. have your boots at the door. Like, just that simple. So clarity is the big missing piece in my perspective. So yeah, no problem. Just trying to fix that. And then what is abundant? I would say like okay, and now we're going into the feels. The feels. Don't cry. I'm gonna try not to cry. We're both gonna try not to cry. I would say what's really, really abundant is hope and passion, and like that that ember that refuses to fucking die. Like it has been rained on. It has been pissed on from every angle by every force, by the economy, by the government, by consumer perspective, by misinformation, by fucking conspiracy, by so much bullshit. It has literally just been pummeled from every angle, and it refuses to fucking go out. It is still, even at its worst, it's still smoldering. Days later, after a massive storm, you look outside and you see that there's still smoke coming from that fire pit. And that is the thing that is the fucking spark that will keep this industry alive, whatever way we have to. Whether that looks like we have to adapt, we have to change the way that we fish a little bit. It's never going to be like it was. That's not the world we live in. Nothing is. There's nothing that will ever be like it was. Does that look like, fishing for this part of the year and, doing a different type of harvesting, whether it's seafood harvest or seaweed or shellfish or something like that, just keeping work on the water, whether it's boat maintenance and fishing, whether it's tugging and fishing. And I know that there's a bunch of fishers right now who are like, shut up. But it's like, if you want to maintain that life, it's, there's you have to adapt. And I think that there's enough of a love for it and for what it means to the communities, what it means to the families, what it means to the coastal economy, and also what it means to the environment and to ocean stewardship. Like fishermen are the straight up original environmentalists of the ocean. They are not in the business of raping and pillaging the seas. No one wants to catch the last fish. That literally would destroy your business model. And anyone who gets on a soapbox and gets all up on the overfishing, Canada has one of the most overly managed fisheries in the world. Small scale commercialmen are not overfishing. Sorry, hate to break it to you guys. Get off that soapbox. It's not a reality. None of them want to catch the last fish. Learn about business. That would literally destroy their business model. So take a seat. And that right there is the kind of passion that will kick down the doors and bust through these fucking barriers like a king tide coming. Thank you for joining my TED Talk.
It's just all the feels, Trish. That was so beautiful.
I was really close there, though. You heard the wavering.
Oh, it was beautiful. You got me too. So good.
No, we're feeling it. We're gonna cry after this, though, right?
Yeah, we will. We'll cry off the record for the private podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I'm so glad you have a private podcast for the crying. It's so
right.
Good. Yeah, it's hard to be like it takes a lot of work to be like an upfront badass all the time. We also need space to be soft. It's important. And I think that's, I can relate to fisheries. I think that is a really important part of what the BC Young Fishermen's Network does as well, is create space to hear those fears, to hear those pain points, to hear the rants and understand that behind them it's not just like another angry fisherman. It's someone who has a lot of fear because they have a lot of love. And that's the ember.
Preach, sister. That's so good. Okay.
I don't know where we're going to go from here, actually.
I know. I'm like, and we're done. Well, okay, here's one. How can people get in touch with you? Like when you say
Okay.
you get online, people are talking to you online. Where is online? How do they get in touch with you?
Okay. So for the BC Young Fishermen's Network, number one, website, www.bcyoungfishermen.com.
Okay.
That is like the hub where you can find all of the links to everywhere. Instagram, obviously, is a classic. That one is, for the scrollers in the room, at BC Young Fishermen. Facebook, we have the network page, and then we have the private group. So the network page is announcements, other postings from other fisheries pages. So like West Coast Mariner, West Coast Fisherman, Pacific Fisherman. It's, there's that. So it's a bit more broad. And then for those who want to go a bit more deep dive, have a bit more of those kind of deeper conversations, and also, maybe access different resources, like connect directly with other fishermen who are like, hey, I'm looking for this gear. Anyone have any to sell? Or, hey, I'm trying to, do this on my boat. Does anyone know anything about this? That is our private Facebook group. So that is in the, I guess if you're looking up groups, look up BC Young Fishermen's Network. And then you can join the private Facebook group. It is primarily for fishermen, for, seafood advocates, or stakeholders and advocates, fisheries advocates. But it really is like we try to keep it as a space primarily for the fishermen to discuss their needs directly with each other, and jokes and share pictures of boats and, all the stuff they love. So that is the best way to connect on that front. If you want to connect with me directly, you can hop onto the BC Young Fishermen's Network webpage and fill in the contact form. I'll include my email address as well in the notes on this. It's just like, it's kind of a weird email address, but so plenty of ways to get a hold of the network and also connect with BC fishermen.
I love it. I love it. What can we do to help?
Spread the word, spread the word just in every capacity. I think that connecting with other young fishermen's networks is a really key piece of this, because it's not just coastal British Columbia that's facing challenges with the graying of the fleet, where you've got, the more senior generation is aging out, and there is, there just aren't the young people coming in behind them to fill the boots. And a lot of that intergenerational knowledge is going to be lost. This is not a unique challenge to British Columbia. It is being seen all over, really all over the world in a lot of capacities. There are lots of different reasons why in lots of different areas. And I'm not even going to go into that because it's, again, such a massive rabbit hole. But it's not unique to British Columbia. So I think that, in North America, the more that we can connect with other fisheries alliances and other young fishermen's networks and alliances, the better. And really, from a public visibility perspective, is to just elevate and amplify the awareness of the importance of the next generation, why it is important to support them, why we need local processing facilities, why we need access to this local seafood, and why it's worth buying, in order to keep it afloat. In terms of, this is kind of BC based in terms of, supporting it on an advocacy level, learn as much as you can, really. Like, it can be hard in British Columbia. There's a very strongly leaning vote that has been successfully trained to believe that all fishermen are evil rapists of the sea and bad. And, that comes with other certain perspectives. And it's really trying to dispel that, like, epic level of misinformation and lack of awareness. And change, demand change by changing demand. So, and the first step to changing demand is really education so that people can make those informed decisions. And, maybe scream and yell at the man to be like, hey, what you're doing is fundamentally wrong. You're not caring for Canadians. Get your shit together.
Yes. And people will have a chance to actually talk to Trish about fish at the Pacific Marine Expo. And I want you to tell everyone, how can they meet up with you at PME this year? I'm so excited that we can hang out again.
I am so excited about this, and thank you for the connection with National Fishermen. I think this is going to be great. So at PME, I am doing a dockside chat, which is going to be about the BC young fishermen and the challenges that new entrants to the industry face, the challenges with public visibility and recruitment across the board in North America. So I'm really hoping to have a fair amount of fishers and fisheries advocates in the crowd there. And, talk about the opportunities, talk obviously about the barriers. And then one thing I really want to do is a crowdsourcing activity, which is like, I've got, 3 to 4 poignant questions, which are, going to be listed. And I want to crowdsource info directly from fishermen for fishermen. What do you need? So that I can then compile a solution sheet that are simple, clear, actionable items that other small scale, young fishermen's alliances or fisheries alliances can just have access to, and choose action items that might be accessible to them given their resources. So it's really an effort to, as I said, bring together that greater network of support. Because when we all speak together, we're so much louder. So yeah, so that's what I'm doing there. That's going to be on the 9th. I believe at 2:00. It will be listed on the PME website. And so that's going to be Young Fishermen's Network. I encourage anybody to come on by afterwards. Come chat with me. Come find me. We can have a sit down. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear your views. I want to hear your challenges. I want to hear, what keeps it going for you? What's abundant for you? What's lacking for you? Where do we need the support? How can we do that? And also, I will, of course, be there as Trish Talks Fish. So, when I'm not wearing the Young Fisherman's Network hat, wearing the Trish Talks Fish hat, chatting with, I really want to connect with some of the seafood processing businesses and some of the great tech that is coming out right now. When I was there last year, I was floored by just the quantity and quality of a lot of the technology that was coming out, particularly in the arena of monitoring and safety. And that is definitely a space that I'd like to connect with in terms of for messaging and copywriting purposes as a marketer, because that is something that I really want to elevate in the industry and make sure that, those products are getting into the hands and getting in front of the people that need them the most. So that's kind of that's my side quest. I mean, it's actually like a primary and very important part of keeping my business afloat because, capitalism, but, that's an exciting one for me. I've been scoping the expo list and I'm like, oh yeah, see those Ropless boys are going to be back here. I wonder what the developments they've made in the last year. How's it going?
So on the 9th at 2 p.m. at the National Fishermen booth.
Pretty sure it's 2 p.m. Maybe 2:30. I have to double check.
Okay, cool. And also, hopefully, Trish will be able to stop by inspired by our conversations, the Partners of Commercial Fishermen Parlor dockside chat that's going down on the 8th and 9th from 3:45 to 4:45. It's like a happy hour, time to congregate, hang out, and just effing chill with people who get what we're talking about and not have to worry about being judged for it. You know what I'm saying? We can have the feels and not be judged because that's what it's all About.
100%. You know, I will be there. Like, yeah, yeah. There's gonna be yeah. We'll have. I'm like, I think we might have to like separate ourselves from the hips at some point at that event.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be like, okay, I'll see you in an hour. I'm gonna talk to you right now. I'll let you do your thing. With that hat, I gotta go.
We need to separate. We need to make moves. Gotta go. Gotta go. We'll circle back.
Speaking of wearing hats, because many are listening and they don't know that we are actually dressed up right now. Trish and I do this. We like to embrace this time together. And currently, I'm wearing a hat, a chapeau, if you will, with a feather, a little Victorian-esque looking top and a scarf. However, it has been topped by Trish's fabulous cape that I want her to explain to us the beauty of it and also how it ties into her badassness within the fishery and part as a commercial fisherman. So I will give you the floor on this beautiful fashion moment.
Okay, thank you, because you know we all love a gal moment, and also my original desire to be a period film costume designer just like still exists in my life on a day-to-day basis. So this cape, I will stand up and I will give you the like as much of the full purview as possible here. Let's just do it. All right, so we are rocking. It is like a 3/4 kind of pure wool, 100% wool interior or exterior and lining, made in Canada and Edmonton. This is the kind of quality garment that you do not get anymore. And so I found this at a local thrift store. And immediately I was like, oh, that's for me. You know, fits in the shoulders, perfect. Looked at the tag. I was like, all right, this is a piece. And it is in impeccable condition. So I was like, take my money, and took it home and immediately went on the research deep dive. So determined that it is a circa anywhere between, based on like the cut and the shape of these button toggles, it is from anywhere between 1930 and 1940, maybe 1945. Our origins are in Edmonton, so it was made there. It is there. This is a World War II era nurse's cape. If you look at some of the wartime propaganda, both on the US and the Canadian side for recruiting posters for nurses, you will see that the red on the inside is prevalent in all of these pictures. That is because this was the symbol of Red Cross nurses. So that was featured in recruitment posters. I have a few recruitment posters. If like, I don't know, Megan wants to like throw them out there somewhere. Because we are that level of fashion and history and costume nerd. So here you'll see that there are the initials MHE there. So what those initials were related to was the hospital that was like effectively where the nurse worked primarily. So this was for the, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, I believe it's the Mycordia Hospital, Edmonton. I had to deep dive to find that out because it's the name of the hospital has changed. But originally that hospital was founded in 1900, and they started a nursing institute in, I believe, 1926, which served until I think somewhere around like mid 90s. And there were over, I think, 800 nurses that went through there from 1926 to mid 90s. So this cape would have been worn by potentially a nursing student, potentially a station nurse there, and obviously in World War II era. So where that comes into play with our commercial fisheries connection and intersection, once again, we have an instance of partners stepping up to support the efforts of their partners. In very like epically challenging times, heightened sense of anxiety and fear, I can only imagine what it's like to have your partner, male or female or otherwise, go to war. That is something that I hope I will never have to experience. And, you know, I have such pain for those who are currently experiencing that in the world. And this is really an example of that pull together effort to be like, you are not doing it alone, because partners never let their partners truly do it alone. So this is a working woman's garment. Yes, I do wear it out. Everyone's been like, oh, that's so beautiful. You can wear it out. I'm like, this is a working garment. This is made for like literally like the front lines. Yeah, I'm wearing the cape out. It's happening. That was not the most grateful. So let's try and do it again. Let's try and do it again. Huh. There we go.
What is it also, it's bravo. Is there also an engraved like inscription of the person's name in there?
There is. So there is. I know, Shirley Kennedy.
Oh, Shirley.
I know. I did. I tried to find like an alumni list or a list of like former nurses at this hospital. Also looked up like Sunshine Coast, Shirley Kennedy, because it was on the Sunshine Coast, and likely these kinds of garments are they're donated to thrift stores after a person passes away. The family is like cleaning out the house. Obviously, this was kept in like some kind of cedar chest in a wrapping, and like everything kept away from it. So that's incredibly special. And I cannot find anything on Shirley Kennedy. I am going to post this to the Sunshine Coast History Facebook group, which obviously I'm a part of. Just to see if anyone has any information, because I think it's really special, and I would love to know what the legacy of that is, and if she has family in town. I think it would just be really cool to have a cup of tea and just be like, yeah, like, what's the story? Because the tales that objects tell are incredibly powerful. I actually don't know if you've done a podcast with Laura Messner-Smith, but she
I love her. Right?
Not yet. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she wrote a book called Spirit Things, which is the story of commercial fisheries told through objects, which definitely speaks to like my prop costuming sort of thing. But yeah, so that's the story of this cape. Yet another tale of love supporting love there.
I love it. Yeah, Laura Messersmith Glavin. We bought her book at PME last year, and did an interview with her for the Partners of Commercial Fishermen blog and National Fishermen. If y'all want to Google and check it out, it's just so many amazing women, including Shirley Kennedy. We're celebrating her as well.
Yeah.
But Trish, I can't thank you enough for all you do for the industry, and your heart it just explodes off the screen. And I'm honored to know you. And thank you for being here and giving us your all, as you always do.
All you say is echoed right back to you, my dear. I am richer, wildly richer, for knowing you exist in the world and being your friend. So
and
thank you for the advocacy that you do.
Thank you. And I'm like already skipping past that. I'm like,
I know, we're like, it's okay, we're fine.
But no, so we're going to do another podcast during PME. So I'm excited for us to hear those shenanigans live and see how we're feeling in the moment. That's like a whole other vibe to be within that conference. Holy moly. In the best way possible, the most inspiring way.
Yeah. And you know what's great about, so many great things about PME happening this year again. But last year when I went to that, like I had been doing, shore sport in various capacities for a number of years at that point. I hadn't actually started with the Young Fishermen's Network yet. I was doing project coordination for a few things at the Gibson's Harbor Authority. I had spent the summer working on the fish sales boat as a fishmonger, like dockside fishmonger, best job ever. And I just like found this conference and I was like, I want to go. I really want to go. And it was the first like fisheries marine conference, seafood, anything that I've ever been to. Because I was like, all right, like this is it. This is what we're doing. Like we're going for it. We're leaning into this hard. And I've been like ramping that up for a couple of years. And I went there, and that was my first one, and I met you.
Yeah.
And then since then, I've spoken at conferences. I've been, invited to talk about, not only Trish Talks Fish stuff, but also BC Young Fishermen's Network stuff. I went to Boston this year, where we connected again with a few other amazing people. We learned that Emily DeSouza is really tall, and it
Very tall. She
very
does
tall.
a lot of amazing work with her seafood education. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. No, I just laugh because we're like, wow, Emily does so much within her seafood education world, and Emily is tall. Like that was our takeaway.
Yeah, that was our, yeah, we were like, she's a powerhouse, she's a marketing genius, and she is just very, very tall. Like we are also relatively small of stature, but
and then Julie Kuchapatov, who just love being around her at all time. I'm like, Mama Julie, can you tell me what you would do in this situation? And I just love hearing her give advice on how to handle, to be a strong woman in any kind of industry, especially a male dominated one, is you got to have your girls with you or your peeps.
100%. Yeah, you gotta have your crew, you gotta have your supporters. Absolutely. And yeah, she is very, does not mince words. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And she'll be there at PME as well this year, so that's very exciting. Yeah, I think some really great conversations are going to come out of this event, and I'm just so it's really exciting to have this kind of marker of it being a year since the last one, since we met, and how much has happened and how much we've both done. And I think it's really important for women in the industry, for everybody in the industry, to take pause, to look back and be like, hey, I did some shit.
Mm-hmm.
I had some hard times. I learned some lessons, but I gave way more than I took. And if I've been of service, then that's it. That's it right there. I can feel good.
What a beautiful way to end this. I appreciate you, friend, and stay on for the private podcast. But I thank you so much for being on this one, and we'll talk soon.
All right. I love you, my girl. Thank you again so much for inviting me and for inviting the Young Fishermen's Network to be shared with a broader audience. It's wonderful.
Honored to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Partners of Commercial Fishermen podcast. If you would like to support our community, please tap the subscribe button, share with family and friends, post on socials, or write a review. It would be so amazing. And if you're a POCF looking for more resources on how to navigate this unique lifestyle, things from long-distance dating to motherhood advice, visit meganwaldrop.com. We can't wait to connect with you. If you want to connect further with others in our community, I'd love for you to join us in the private forum. The forum is a VIP members-only safe space for us to chat and relate with POCFs all over the world and share our thoughts and feelings without judgment, because we get you. There are also monthly Zoom calls where you can find answers, seek support, and receive guidance, plus giveaways and special offers that are only available for forum members. To learn more, go to meganwaldrop.com/private-forum. Thanks for listening today. Being here means you're a part of the POCF family, and we wouldn't be a community without you. I'm Megan, and this is the Partners of Commercial Fishermen podcast. As always, much love, POCF pride, and remember, you are not alone.